All right. This is your boy, Coach Malcolm, with the Halftime Podcast. As always, I'm going to jump right into it because this is going to be an emergency upload because we have, I won't call it breaking news because it's no longer breaking news because it was yesterday's news. But the Bulls have fired Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley. And while everybody in Chicago, the national media, has pretty much given their opinions and been overjoyed and happy, or even called for the jobs of these individuals prior to it being announced, from Michael Wilbon to Nick Friedel. I personally, one, don't feel like this was done because the ownership group for the Chicago Bulls felt like Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley were incompetent and couldn't do their jobs. I feel like this was only done because there was a sense of embarrassment, which makes me feel like they haven't truly learned their lesson and they're not truly, in my opinion, doing the work and soul searching to try to make better decisions. I think they did this out of embarrassment and out of the, I guess, the force and push to kind of save a little bit of face, which for me does not give me any type of encouragement that Michael Reinsdorf, Jerry Reinsdorf, or any of them are going to be moving forward in a very productive manner because they haven't really learned their lesson. They're not trying to do better. They're just trying not to be embarrassed. Now, if you have followed me and followed the Halftime Podcast for the duration that we have been out, which is about 2 years now, and prior to that, I have been screaming for Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley to be fired year 2 into their reign. It's been 6 years, but in year 2, I wanted them to be fired. The 2 reasons why I wanted them to be fired right out the gate: I thought the mishandling of Lauri Markkanen was very poor. I thought at the time Lauri fit the exact mold of what you wanted from a power forward position in today's NBA. And I thought we had the perfect player there. All we had to do was keep him, talk to him, address his concerns, pay him adequately, get rid of the coach that we had in Jim Boylan, find the coach that we eventually got in Billy Donovan, and we would have been fine. The second reason why I wanted the Bulls to fire Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley is because they traded for DeMar DeRozan when you already had Zach LaVine, which made no sense because you were putting 2 6'6" shooting guards on the floor at the same time. One who had the ability to shoot from the outside, mid-range, and finish at the basket, and another one whose game was only limited to the free throw line in the mid-range. Neither of them were net positive defenders, and one of them had already been proven that swapping him out for just a guy, well, I won't say just a guy, but swapping him out for another superstar immediately put that team into a championship situation. So one guy had already proven that he can't help you win anything, being DeMar DeRozan. And then the other guy that you had was a budding superstar in Zach LaVine that you should have been trying to nurture and build a team around him. So I thought those 2 things out the gate from the AK and Mark Eversley, I guess, campaign administration were 2 of the first alarming signs to me that these guys had no idea what they were doing. After that, their failure to recognize that they needed to replace Lonzo Ball's productivity and some form of a point guard that could manage to do a little bit of that, orchestrate, control, operate, whether that was trading for a Chris Paul, whether that was reaching out and trying to get a Russell Westbrook, whether at the time that could have been potentially seeing if there was a low risk, high reward value on putting Ben Simmons at the point guard position, just trying to figure it out. But sitting on your hands, hoping that Lonzo would just get healthy as your plan was absolutely egregious. Then when you were able to pick up a player like Patrick Beverley, who showed some signs that he could at least help defensively, kind of help facilitate, be a point guard, be somebody that could move the ball around a little bit and not make it such a situation where the ball just lands into DeMar's hand. It's a black hole. We wait to see what he does, and then he kicks it out. When we saw that Patrick Beverley could help with that a little bit, we didn't do what we needed to do to try to re-sign him and give him an opportunity to kind of fill in that Lonzo Ball void when we saw that it actually did help Zach and his game. So that was another egregious thing that was done. Then, when you had your first opportunity in the lottery from AK to draft a player that could be impactful, you missed out, or you decided to pick a player over two guys that at the time, and still to this day, would have been much better prospects, and even at the time of the draft, were much better prospects than Patrick Williams. That was Tyrese Halliburton and Denny Avdija. You didn't draft Denny, who went later in the draft, and you didn't draft Tyrese, who went later in the draft. You needed a point guard at the time, so Tyrese would have been perfect. But if you were looking for a 6'8", 6'9" playmaking forward or somebody along that line, 6'7", 6'9", then Denny was showing absolute signs of being that type of player, as he's shown signs of that being that player in Washington and Portland, became an all-star, and we know what Tyrese became. But you passed on that for a recreational project in Patrick Williams. Another egregious mistake. Then, as your campaign goes forward, you miss out on opportunities to sell high on your assets. Remember, I said I wasn't a fan of DeMar DeRozan, us trading for him. I thought that was egregious. But since we got him, that year that he was an MVP candidate, that was the time to sell high on DeMar and extract as much value as you possibly can from a guy that was making an MVP type of statement, a league MVP type of statement. The amount of first-round picks that we potentially could have got from a trade for DeMar, who possibly would have ended up in New York at the time, or LA at the time, we could have got a good amount of healthy picks for DeMar, especially at that moment. Opportunities to trade Vucevic early on. Opportunities to trade Kobe White earlier on. Opportunities to trade Zach LaVine earlier on. And those things didn't happen. Waited too long. Didn't consider the ramifications of moving too slow. I wasn't a fan of moving Zach, but New York at one point was willing to give up 2 to 3 first-round picks for Zach, along with some good complementary players in R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley, who eventually got traded to the Toronto Raptors. I mean, so many idiotic moments across the board for this administration that was allowed to continue and go on for 6 years, ultimately for Arturas and Mark to just sell off every single trade that they did and eventually trade some of the players that they drafted, only to end up with a surplus of second-round picks, losing records, and their own first-round rights to their first round picks back. Because we gave those up when we traded for DeMar. You see how stupid this is? 6 years of this is what it took. But it would have lasted longer. And I think that's what Bulls fans and what the Chicago media is not really being honest about in this exact moment, is that this actually would have kept going had not the Jaden Ivey situation made national news. And with the Jaden Ivey situation making national news, then the conversation turned into, well, who was the stupid people that traded for this kid? Oh, it's these guys. Wait, how much more stupid stuff have they done? Oh, they've done a lot more stupid stuff. And then the embarrassment is what caused the firing to occur. So again, I would be much more happy if I felt like the ownership group was making this decision because they locked in and realized that these guys were just incompetent. But that's not why they got fired. They got fired because the ownership group felt like the Chicago Bulls brand was being embarrassed. And so through the embarrassment, you got to do something to save face. You got to do something to say, well, wait, hold on now. We are the Chicago Bulls. We are a brand that is global. We are the house and the franchise that retired the jersey of the greatest basketball player of all time. So with that being said, we will not be the laughing stock of the national media. That is not what's going to happen. So we're going to make a statement today definitively to say no more laughing at us. We're going to remove the people that have made these mistakes. Please put that in your national media that we've fired these people. We've let them go. So hopefully you can take us out the line of fire. That's all this is. That's all this is about. So as a fan, you can be happy that Arturas and Mark finally got fired. Absolutely. But what does it actually mean? And this is what I, myself, is more concerned with going forward, is who is going to replace them. Because whoever replaces them tells me more about what the ownership group has learned and what they're going to be willing to do going forward. Now, we have to keep in mind that Billy Donovan did not get let go. We have to keep in mind that Billy Donovan reportedly has a phenomenal and strong relationship with the Reinsdorf family. We have to keep in mind that Billy Donovan recently this past summer was extended by AK and Mark Eversley. We have to keep in mind that plenty of people thought that Billy Donovan was potentially on his way out the door to go coach at the University of North Carolina, which we now know is Mike Malone's job. So, what are the Bulls going to do with Billy Donovan? Or better yet, what decision is Billy Donovan going to make? Is the firing of AK and Mark Eversley is a firing obviously about saving face and dealing with the embarrassment and rectifying that? That's one of it. That's one piece of it. But is the second piece, is it about trying to keep Billy Donovan in-house? Now, I am not the biggest Billy Donovan fan. While I do respect the fact that he's a Hall of Fame coach and that he's a 2-time national championship winner when he was coaching at the University of Florida, his NBA pedigree leaves a lot where you're just like, eh. I mean, he's not a bad coach. He's not a great coach. He was in OKC. He had great talent with KD and Russell Westbrook. He got to, I think, the Western Conference Finals, and then they lost it and never could truly recover. Then he had those years with Russ where he was a triple-double king, and then he had that one year where he had the 3-guard lineup with Chris Paul and Shea and Dennis Schroeder, and it was like really cool to look at and stuff like that. But he never really did anything with the talent. He never got too far with the talent. He's not an NBA champion coach. He may not even be an NBA champion caliber coach. He's a great college coach. But to be so locked in on wanting to keep Billy Donovan is a red flag to me about this ownership group and their lack of learning lessons. Which is their loyalty is so much to a fault that is always to the detriment of winning. They do not know how to let their friends out of positions that they don't need to be in. They do not know how to tell their partners, their good old boys club that they got going on, that you no longer are serviceable in this role, that you cannot help us win. They will allow their buddies, friends, comrades, people that they think are nice guys, they will allow them to stay in positions while not flourishing for the longest of time. And by keeping Billy Donovan around, that's showing signs of an ownership group that still has not learned their lesson. Because while AK and Mark Eversley were also making these terrible decisions, Billy Donovan was also doing a terrible job of coaching. Plenty of games where he was calling terrible timeouts, drawing up terrible fourth quarter plays, drawing up terrible out of bounds plays, drawing up terrible late game execution plays, making terrible late game substitutions, roster changes that didn't make sense, lineup changes that didn't make sense. There was a lot of faulty coaching on behalf of Billy Donovan that was going on over this past 6-year run with AK and Mark being in play. So I think, and I hope and pray that Billy Donovan walks away from the Chicago Bulls so that the Bulls have nowhere to pivot but either to showing that they still want to go through their whole family and friends system for jobs by hiring somebody that's already in the organization, and they just do something like that, which is typical what the Reinsdorf do, or they have to pivot to doing something that's uncomfortable for them. Because as we all know, for the most part, you can only reach that level of greatness in anything that you want to do in life when you're willing to be uncomfortable. Anytime you're willing to just stay comfortable, you're usually complacent and you're usually not pushing past that threshold. You're usually not doing what it takes to get you to that next level. So I'm hoping and praying that Billy Donovan wants nothing else to do with the Chicago Bulls. I'm hoping that this gesture of firing AK and Mark Eversley does not make Billy Donovan the happy camper that the Bulls are hoping it makes him. I hope it just does what he hopes it does, which is take a lot of blame off of the Bulls' failures from him, and it points fingers at those two so that it saves face for him as a coach. I'm hoping that that's the value that he gets out of it, but I'm hoping that he walks away from the Chicago Bulls. Because my ultimate fear is that the Bulls are looking or have fired AK and Mark Eversley only to appease Billy Donovan, but simultaneously to put him in position to be the next president of operations or general manager, which would absolutely be a Reinsdorfian thing to do. And whether people want to believe it or accept it or not, I'm not so gung-ho on the guy who was a terrible coach to now become the president of operations or the general manager to try to turn his team around. Again, I understand he's a Hall of Fame coach, but it's not for what he did in the NBA. It's what he did in college. In the NBA, in college, it's not the same thing. So I hope and pray, like I said, that Billy Donovan walks away. So that way, Michael Reinsdorf is forced to do something, to pivot in some kind of way. Either just do the same thing that they always do, which is hire from within their little family tree and friends and blah, 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 which will just show and prove exactly, as Bulls fans and for myself, exactly what I mean by they haven't learned their lesson and they're still going to do the same thing, or they have to become uncomfortable. Well, what are you suggesting when you say they have to become uncomfortable, Coach Malcolm? I'm great you asked out there, halftime community. What I'm saying by that is rumors are percolating that they're interested, supposedly, in a Bob Myers or OKC's GM, Sam Presti, or former president of Ops and GM for the Toronto Raptors, and Masai Ujiri. All of those names come with their own set of pedigrees. Each one of these guys have led franchises to a championship or more. We know what Bob did with Golden State. We clearly see what Sam Presti has done with Oklahoma City, and we saw what Masai was able to do in his little bit of time in Denver and what he did exactly with Toronto when he got there. All three of these guys have enough cachet around the league to get things done. They have great relationships with agents to get certain players. All three of these guys have built championship contending teams and championship winning teams. But you know what comes with making those type of decisions? If you bring those type of guys in, one, carte blanche, that they will be able to do whatever it is that they want to do when it comes down to getting players, signing players, and anything of that nature. But then it also comes with paying them a lot of money to take on that job, which we know the Reinsdorf family is cheap. This is a franchise that historically has ran away from the luxury tax like a fugitive on the loose. They do not want anything to do with the luxury tax. So bringing guys in like Bob Myers, Sam Presti, and Masai Ujiri to come here, you're going to have to let go of that rope and say do whatever it takes that you know within your power, within your scope, within your vision, that has been proven, by the way, to turn this team into a championship contending team. And that may be having the Reinsdorf family be comfortable with paying the luxury tax, which they have never done except one time. So while, yes, everybody is screaming, Bob Myers, Masai, Sam, yeah, it sounds good. And of course, if that does happen, then that will express to me that Michael Reinsdorf has learned a lesson and he's ready to be uncomfortable. That would make me happy. Because I would just personally assume that there's no way a Bob Myers, a Masai Ujiri, or a Sam Presti took on a job with the Chicago Bulls handicapped with an understanding that they'll have one hand behind their back, unable to kind of make things happen due to the lack of flexibility from the ownership being able to or being willing to pay for players, going to lunch. I'm assuming that those guys wouldn't take that role knowing that they're that limited in that capacity. Because you got to pay to win. Because you got to get the right talent. You got to get the right players. And those players that can help you win are expensive. Simple as that. Cheap players don't win you championships. Not in today's NBA. Having a cheap roster does not win you championships. It may or may not make you competitive. But it for sure keeps you out of championship contention. Because if you want good players, you have to pay them. Just that simple. Players are not given discounts anymore. So, I personally am more concerned, again, with who are they going to replace Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley with? And my sneaky suspicion is that it's Billy Donovan. Because I'm not a believer that the Chicago Bulls and the Reinsdorf family is truly, one, learned their lesson, two, did this because they realized that AK and Mark were just truly incompetent, three, are ready to be uncomfortable, four, ready to give somebody else complete power over their finances to be able to put a team together, and last but not least, I don't think they truly care about winning like that. They care about the bottom line. They care about the tickets being sold. And even with the Bulls being one of the worst teams in the NBA, fans still come and watch them. Tickets still get sold. Merchandise still gets sold. They still sit amongst the top in the NBA in attendance, with having probably the biggest arena in basketball in the NBA. So when the money is still looking good, the bottom line is still being met and exceeded upon, I mean, it's kind of hard to convince those guys that they need to be uncomfortable, that they need to do something different. And that's where my hesitation and being excited comes from. The hesitation is in whether or not they're actually going to do the things required to be a winning franchise. Because it is absolutely absurd that we are where we are when it comes down to the Chicago Bulls. If we wasn't in Chicago, we would be the Sacramento Kings. That's how bad we are. We'd be the Pelicans. We would be what the Charlotte Hornets have been prior to this year. Where now it looks like the Charlotte Hornets have finally figured out all the right young pieces and put them all together. And now it looks like they're a very dangerous team that you may or may not really not want to see coming into this playoffs. But without us being the Chicago Bulls, we will be bullshit. The brand is big. The globalization of the Chicago Bulls is grandiose. It's one of the most noticeable franchises in the world. The Bulls logo is probably one of the most marketable and most recognized logo, probably outside of the Christian cross. One of the easiest symbols for people to recognize across the globe is probably the Bulls logo. That's how big this brand is. So when you can lean on that, it makes it difficult for you to really care about putting in the efforts or paying what it takes to quote unquote win. You can say it in your statements, you can say it in your speeches, you can say it in your interviews that we hear the fans and we care about winning and we feel so bad about the fans not seeing the product that's winning and blah, 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 blah. But it ain't going to really make a difference to the ownership until the money is not being seen the way that it's been seen. If the productivity isn't the same when it comes down to profits. But every year, fans come. Every year, merchandise gets sold. Money is always made. So I'm not convinced that we're going to see changes or true drastic, a true drastic pivot in ideology from the ownership group. I don't see that coming. I gladly welcome myself to be completely wrong. I hope we can get a Bob Myers. I hope we get a Sam Presti. I hope we get a Masai Ujiri. But my gut and sneaky suspicion tells me we're going to get a Billy Donovan announcement that he'll be moving from being the head coach to the front office and be a part of basketball operation and making decisions going forward. And if that is the case, I believe that his hire as head coach will probably be the Duke head coach, John Shire. And then he'll probably appoint his son to be on John Shire's staff as one of his lead assistants. So his son will get out of the G League operation. And what will we have? Yet again, relationships and friends of the owners and all of this stuff working itself in and filtering its way through another process of the boys club just putting on their friends for positions to get paid six figures to sit around and do nothing so they can all make sure that they work together and go golfing with each other. That's it. That's it. That's what I believe is going to happen. Again, I hope that I'm wrong. I hope we get the Bob Myers. I hope we get the Sam Presti. I hope we get the Masai Ujiri. I hope we get somebody that makes this ideology of comfort go away. I hope we get somebody that turns this good old boy network upside down. And we get somebody that comes in with a vision, a proven record of winning championships or getting teams into championship contention, having the ability to utilize money, go into the luxury tax, and build a winning team. But I don't see it happening because even with all the failures over the last 6 years, profitability has still been up, and away for the Chicago Bulls and the Reinsdorf family. And no matter what, we are the fans. They're the business people. They're in it for the business. We're in it for the love of the game. And hopefully to see a winning product. But don't forget that they're in it for the business. And as long as the business is going good, what motivations do they have to really make the differences and changes that's going to be necessary to make this team a winning franchise? I hope I'm wrong. I hope that Michael is passionate. I hope that he is someone that wants to be a part of a parade. I'm hoping that that's who he is. I'm hoping that he loves this game just like his fans does, and how he tries to acknowledge that he has the same type of love and thirst for a winning team like the fans do. I'm hoping that that's all true and not just great PR. But time will tell, and proof will be in the pudding based upon the decision he makes going forward. Well, who will be the new president of ops and who will be the new GM? Because that'll tell me everything that I need to know about how serious we should take Michael Reinsdorf as an owner or president, and just how much the glory days of Derrick Rose and Michael Jordan are far, 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 far behind us as Bulls fans. And we should probably let go of our hopes and dreams of ever seeing the Chicago Bulls hoist the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Because it won't be anytime soon, and probably most of our lifetimes, because it's ownership. As long as Jerry Reinsdorf and the Reinsdorf family is running it, don't care. As long as the business itself of the Chicago Bulls is proven itself to be profitable. That's it. That's it. So my predictions, like I said, I think they fired them, not because they learned their lesson or they're willing to do anything different, but because they just got tired of being embarrassed. The national media got a wind of things and made the Bulls a laughingstock, and they made this decision to save face. Secondly, they made this decision to appease Billy Donovan, which only makes me believe that the leverage that Billy Donovan has within the Bulls organization is much greater than maybe I even assumed. And if that's the case, it leads me to believe that he'll be our next president of operations or general manager or some sort, leading the charge and finding a new head coach and leading the charge on, quote unquote, building a championship roster for the Chicago Bulls that will still most likely fall under the guidelines of not going into luxury tax and doing things like that all over again. So I'm hoping, like I said, I'm hoping I'm wrong, but only time will tell. But that is my thoughts on the Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley firing done by Michael Reinsdorf and the Reinsdorf family of the Chicago Bulls. That's just my thoughts. I'm Coach Malcolm. You can follow me at CoachM_Goddard. You can follow the Halftime Podcast at the Halftime Pod. You can follow us on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram. Please make sure you like, comment, share all of our videos and content. You can find us also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts if you want to just stream the audio version of a lot of our episodes. And so, that's all I got for that. Again, I'm a lifetime Bulls fan, disgruntled Bulls fan, and I can only be excited and happy when I see exactly who's going to replace these guys. But that's been my time with you guys. The Halftime Podcast community, as always, you know how we sign out. And see red, bear down, peace, blessings, and prosperity to all of you. Peace.